points. The first parasha, we'll start in the beginning. Parashat Acharei discusses the entrance into Kodesh HaKodashim. As we know, Aaron HaKohen was commanded, as were all of Am Yisrael for the rest of time, commanded to go into Kodesh HaKodashim in this very specific time of the year called Yom HaKippurim. And very specifically, there was a work preparation that had to do in advance, already really a week in advance. The preparations would already start. And certainly on that very day, there were plenty of preparations, as well as actually when he went in, there were many various halachot that the Kohen Gadol had to know and had to be very, very careful about. Even says that as he was entering, the Kohanim, they would actually stand by his side. There were groups of Kohanim standing next to the Kohen Gadol right as he's about to enter, because they're not allowed to enter. So he is, but they're not. And they would wait for him, and as they were waiting, they would pray for his atzlacha. And some of the midrashim actually quote that great people from previous generations, like some say Aaron HaKohen, would personally be there with the Kohen Gadol as he would enter into Kodesh HaKodashim, or the Shvatim HaKedoshim would be along, or Malachim would accompany the person as he was entering Kodesh HaKodashim. But we'll see in a minute that the Malachim really were also not allowed inside. Even Malachim were not allowed into Kodesh HaKodashim. So this is a pretty incredible moment, this whole idea, and what's beginning in this parasha is, of course, you read this parasha on Yom HaKippurim because it's very relevant, the Seder Avodah of Yom HaKippurim itself. There is a question, though, regarding specifically Aaron HaKohen. Was he permitted to go into Kodesh HaKodashim as he pleased, even not Yom HaKippurim? So interestingly, Rashi talks about this. Rashi says, Ki be'anan era'e ala kaporet, I should be seen by the kaporet, which is the Aaron HaBerit. He says, be'anan, in a cloud. Now what does that mean? That every time, says Rashi, that you enter into Kodesh HaKodashim, you must enter with the Anana Ketoret of Yom HaKippurim. Which means that Rashi essentially learns it was not allowed for Aaron HaKohen to enter any other day of the year, only on Yom HaKippurim and only following the protocol as it is written in Parashat Acharei. Now, however, the Midrash, very interestingly, says something very different. The Midrash says you should know that Aaron HaKohen was allowed into Kodesh HaKodashim whenever he wanted. Any day of the year, he was permitted to go into Kodesh HaKodashim. Just what? If he's going to go to Kodesh HaKodashim, Bezot yavo Aharon el HaKodesh, Befar ben Bakar, he has to bring korbanot, he has to bring the ketot. There's a process. You don't just walk into Kodesh HaKodashim. But he could do that any day of the year as he wishes. Now that was very special for Aaron HaKohen, according to the Midrash. He was exceptional in that. Nobody else was allowed into Kodesh HaKodashim on any basis except for on Yom HaKippurim. So that's something that's very unique to Aaron. But I want to ask you a question. Do you think that Aaron HaKohen used it, A, and if he used it, how many times did he use this dispensation, this heter of being able to go to Kodashim? Twice? Where'd you get twice? Once a month?
No question. Probably whenever performing with Moshe, he might have tried himself to do something.
Chukat for the Paraduma? What do you mean?
No, not Chukat. The proper snake half.
Oh, Nechasha Nechoshet.
Yeah, before he went to Moshe, before that, maybe.
Nope, doesn't say it there. Yeah?
What about by Korah? When he did Korah?
He did that outside. It didn't say he did that inside. That was actually Le'nei Ha'am. It was to the presence of the nation. It wasn't in Kodesh HaKodashim. So interestingly, this question was asked the Belzer Rebbe. And the Belzer Rebbe, he says, based on a different pasuk, in a different Rashi, it says, Vayash kasher tziva Hashem et Moshe. Rashi over there says, at the end of the parasha of Yom HaKippurim, says that he did everything as Hashem commanded Moshe, meaning Aaron did everything. Le'agid shivcho shel Aaron shelo shina. Aaron did not change from the command that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Moshe Rabbeinu. He did it and followed it exactly as it was supposed to be followed. And then Rashi says, and he never wore the clothing of the Kohen Gadol simply out of prestige and honor, only at the point in time where he was commanded to do it. So since Rashi says that he only would do it as he was commanded, and you cannot enter into Kodesh HaKodashim without the Bigdei Keuna, so therefore the implication that the Belzer Rebbe takes from it is that he never entered into the Kodesh HaKodashim. But I want to show you a very interesting Rabbi Aaron Lev Steinman. He was asked the same question. He was asked, Kvod Harav, did Aaron ever use this dispensation? And he answered something amazing. He said, Pashut no. Never did Aaron use this dispensation. Never did he go into Kodesh HaKodashim except for the time where he was commanded to on Yom Kippurim. Well, you say to yourself, that sounds, first of all, how does Rav Steinman know? And second of all, why? Why wouldn't Aaron do it? Says Rav Steinman, Yekara hi mipininim, the Pasuk tells us that the Torah is more precious than pininim means pearls. And the Gemara learns from that pasuk, Yekara mi pininim mi kohen gadol shenichnas lifnai velifnim. That the Torah is more precious than even the kohen gadol who enters on Yom Kippurim. Lifnai velifnim means into Kodesh HaKodashim. You know what's more valuable than that? The Torah that a person learns. So says Rav Steinman, if he had the choice between going into Kodesh HaKodashim and sitting down and learning a daf of Gemara, there's no question that he went and he sat down and learned the daf of Gemara, because the Gemara itself says that it was more precious than even entering into Kodesh HaKodashim, which sometimes we stop and to stop ourselves and realize that that's so incredible. That means that every single one of us has the ability to do something that is more valuable in Shamayim than the Kohen Gadol's entrance. And Aaron, who was able to do something that no one else was able to do, and enter in on a given Tuesday, to just enter in to a Kodesh HaKodashim. And he was the only person in history, but I still have a daf of Gemara, and that's more valuable. So it's true I'm unique, but take advantage. You're the only person that could do this ever in the history of Judaism. Yeah, but you know what else I could do that's even more important than that? Even more important than making history is I could learn Torah. That's more precious. That's more unique. And that's the Torah that a person learns is very important, because one of the incredible points that I think to explain this, how do you explain it? You say to yourself, here's something so unique, Kodesh HaKodashim, Am Yisrael, the whole entire nation, no one's allowed to do. He's the only person. And Torah is more valuable. So I'll tell you a story that I heard once from the Rav of a Bet HaKnesset when I was very young. Rav Adato. He came one time, I was learning in Eretz HaKodesh after high school. I learned in Yeshivas Chavetz Chaim in Sanhedrin Murchevet. And when he came that year to visit Eretz HaKodesh, and he took me out, we went out to eat together, and he told me a chidush, a beautiful chidush. He says that Rabbi Ber, he did two things, like every other Jew is required to do. He did Kiryat Shema, and he did Tfilah, Shmona Esrei. These two things. But it was very unusual. Most of the time, people, when they do Kiryat Shema, they do it quickly. When it comes to Kiryat Shema, everybody generally does it pretty quickly. But when it comes to Shmona Esrei, people take their time. People want to say Tfilah for the Parashat, Tfilah for Refuah, Tfilah for this, Tfilah for that. Baruch Ber was the other way around. When it came to Kriyat Shema, every single word. Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. It took him 10-15 minutes to do Kriyat Shema. It was something unusually long. And then you would expect Shmona Esrei, maybe he had a 10-minute Shmona Esrei, a 12-minute Shmona Esrei. No. It was done in 3-4 minutes. He finished Shmona Esrei faster than everybody else. He said, we don't understand. That's unusual. Usually it's the other way around. He said, very simple. Is the tefillah is me talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the Kiryat Shema is HaKadosh Baruch Hu talking to me. Me talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to talk. I care about talking, but there's much more important things. Manichin, like the Gemara says, Manichin, Haye ha'olam haba, oskim b'haye sha'ah. The Gemara says, in the context, it says over there, a person who has the opportunity to pray long or to pray short and learn the rest of the time. What do you osek b'chayei sha'ah in the comparison? So tefillah is me talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's important, it's valuable, but we could do it quickly. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to me, that's the Kiryat Shema. I want to listen to every single word. I want to make sure I understand. I want to make sure to see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to tell me. I have to listen very carefully. You know, sometimes people, when they talk to their spouses or when they talk to their children, they expect total attention. But when their spouses talk to them and when their children talk to them, they're half there, half not. What did you say? Can you repeat that? I don't remember hearing what you said specifically. And you didn't hear. 15 minutes she was talking, you didn't hear anything. That's not the way it is. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for sure, it shouldn't be that way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to us, we have to listen. So I think the pshat is, what's the pshat? That the Torah is more valuable than entering into Kodesh HaKodashim. We enter so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could do for us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgive us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us rain. HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring kapara for Am Yisrael. That's all about us. But you know what Torah is? Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us lessons. He's telling us, this is the ethics. Masechet Avot. This is the way a person is supposed to fulfill halacha. That's what Shabbat is. This is what Kashrut is. This is what Torah is. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to us, there's nothing more valuable, nothing more precious than that. Even the Kodesh HaKodashim, the whole entire Avodah, is considered Hayeh Sha'ah in comparison to that. By the way, back to that Gemara, you should know that the conclusion of that Gemara is that we don't say that. Interestingly, the Gemara says we don't view Torah and Tefillah as if they're in a zero-sum game of if I take too long in the Tefillah, then I'm going to have less time of Torah. We say Zman Torah lehud, Zman Tefillah lehud. Everything has its right time. You're not supposed to compromise on Tefillah for learning Torah. A lot of times you see, even though there was a step in the Gemara that way, I was bringing out from that step, but a lot of times you see people say, why should I sit and answer Amen, all these brachot you have in Shmonai Esrei, all these brachot. And answer Amen, I'll learn a daf of Gemara, but Gemara is more important than Tefillah. No, that's not something that we do. It's against halacha actually to do that. And I remember once reading that the Stipler's son, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zechet Tzadik Revachai, would say that a person who learns during Chazara is mitzvah ba ba'avera. He doesn't get credit for a mitzvah of learning because he's learning when he's not supposed to be learning. He's really doing a sin. So you don't get credit for learning when you're supposed to be doing something else. So as a matter of fact, you don't even get credit for the mitzvah, and it seems like you get punished for such a mitzvah that is not the opportune and proper time to do it. Same thing with Shnai Mikra. I think he said, if I remember the quote right, if a person does Shnai Mikra during Hazarat Shaliach Tzibur, he has to go back and do it again. He doesn't get credit for Shnai Mikra. It's mitzvah ba ba'avera. He's not supposed to be doing it at that time. So it shows you to the extent.
If he's waiting also or no?
No, it's the middle of Hazara. When the Hazan is saying the brachot, he's supposed to be answering Amen. And not just answering Amen, he's supposed to be listening to the brachot and answering Amen. Because in a certain sense, answering Amen without knowing what you're saying to is worse than not answering. If you answer Amen and you don't know what you're answering to, it's an Amen Yatomah. Yes?
Is it talking about John better than anything else in the world?
Better than anything else in the world except for when Hashem talks to you. That's even better than that.
Right, but then why don't you go slower than vice versa? Like the don't want the answer.
No, you mean you should go slower, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you should do. Reb Baruch Ber was a different story. He didn't go that fast. He just went faster than he did in Kriyat Shema. But in general, you're supposed to go slow in this and slow in that. But what's more important, that's my point is, what's more important than a person praying and talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu talks to him. Even more valuable than that. And that's Yikara hi mipininim, mikohen gadol shenichnas lifnai v'nifnim. That's how important, that's how precious every person's learning is. And we shouldn't take it for granted because I learned yesterday and because my friend next to me, he's also learning. So what's so unique about it? It's very unique. It's very hadash. And as a matter of fact, one of the powerful hazars, one of the powerful points is in next week, not next week, the second parasha, in Parashat Kedoshim, where the Torah tells us, Asher ya'aseh otam ha'adam v'chai b'hem. This is a big deal. The world out there, v'chai b'hem, live it up, right? Viva Las Vegas. Live Las Vegas. You ever heard that expression? Viva Las Vegas. It's a life. V'chai b'hem of the goyim lehavdil is about physicality. And if you look at the sources in the Gemara says, Ma ya'aseh adam v'yihyeh. What should a person do to live? He should go ahead and he should essentially, figuratively, kill himself over the Torah. What does it mean, kill himself over the Torah? Commit himself fully to the Torah, and that will give a person life. You say to yourself, that sounds very strange. You're telling me that if I don't chase the desires of this world, if I don't chase the materialism, I just was reading today, one of the Rabbanim sent on WhatsApp, sent me an article from Rav Moshe Feinstein in Hebrew. This article, he talks about, this is going back 50 years ago. Rav Moshe Feinstein said about the importance of what it means to be Jewish is to be not pursuing Olam Hazeh. And he says how so many of the things, if you look around, you start noticing that a lot of the things that we have in the world are simply a removal of the Isur element and the extraction of the Olam Hazeh without the Isur. And he brings a few examples in the context of ways where we sort of just say, okay, we want this Olam Hazeh, but the way the Goyim have it, in the shape, in the format that they have it, it's Asur, unthinkable. So we'll just extract the Isur and we'll have it in a kasher way. And he talks about how the spirit of Am Yisrael is to try to strive to actually take ourselves and remove ourselves and aspire in spiritual matters, not in physical matters. When am I going to get the next pursuit of the next luxury and the next item and the new iPhone and the new this and the new that? It's technically kasher. What's wrong with it? But it's the pursuit that one goes after it that takes him away from what the essence of Torah is and the essence of Judaism, which is a pursuit and a drive for spiritual and loftier matters. And he talks about that at length. But the point isn't to sacrifice. The point is, v'chai b'hem, this is how a person actually brings so much life and so much good and so much happiness. And the reason is because the more we are attached to the physicality, the more difficult it is for us to enjoy the actual finities of the pleasures of this world, because it brings us to become mundane. It makes us a little bit more animalistic, a little bit more unaware, a little bit more assuming that everything is a given, and the Torah refines a person. So that's the v'chai b'hem. And surely we find there's a great family in Bnei Brak that their children, the parents, that their children, all Rashi Yeshivot, like everybody's jealous of them. They're the greatest minds, the greatest midot tovot, great people. And they one time they were sitting Shiva, the mother passed away, and people came and they were talking about their childhood. As when they grew up, they lived in the childhood and the poverty that they had in those days. And the stories that came out, and you say to yourself, they didn't have chairs to sit on. The chair was dilapidated. It was like this wide. In order to sit, you would have to put two chairs together, like poles, and put a board on top of it, so you'd actually have room to sit. And they would explain how there wasn't such a thing as each person having their own bed. They would have 2 and sometimes 3 people sleeping on one bed. And one time, one of the kids who was at the time, he was saying this over much later, but at the time he was 8, 9 years old, they had in the cheder, they would have like, what did Maishala do? This week, what mitzvah did you do? Like the mitzvah notes they have today. And he says, they asked Tzvika, what did you do? And he said that last night I wasn't able to sleep. Why weren't you able to sleep? Well, my brother, he was sleeping on the same bed as me, but instead of sleeping, vertical the proper way, he was sleeping horizontal. He was sleeping in the other direction. So I was trying to sleep, but I wasn't able to, and I didn't want to wake him up. So I also turned in that direction, but I wasn't comfortable because I wasn't actually on the mattress. So I wasn't able to sleep the whole night. But I didn't want to wake him up and chas v'shalom disturb him. Like this is the type of family, that was the type of aspirations of spirituality and carefulness to a brother and sensitivity. Oh, who wouldn't want children like that? Who isn't jealous of having a child that doesn't constantly fight with his brother, beat up his brother, upset at his brother, doesn't want to give anything to his brother? Here you have a child, I'm afraid he's going to wake up. I'm not going to sleep the whole night. Okay, whatever. I'd rather not sleep the whole night than wake him up. It's Gan Eden. How does that happen? It's just a coincidence? Happens to be somebody in Bnei Brak. As a pshat is, when a person sacrifices from his physical, and you have the basicness, a bare minimum. They were talking about what they would eat. They wouldn't even eat fresh bread. They would buy bread from 2 days ago, which was, on the verge of getting moldy. It didn't taste good at all. The father would go ahead and he would take a little bit of coffee and he would mix it with the bread so it would have a flavor and that it would mask the negative taste, just so that the children would be able to eat it. And still it was difficult for them to eat. So he would make sure to tell them stories to engage them as they were eating so that they won't really feel the brunt of it. Like that kind of level of poverty that people live through. And you say, what torture, how terrible. But the truth of the matter is, those kids grew very happy and they became great people. And that was the secret to the success. A person's looking for success. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to go and you have to strip yourself from everything that you have, but not the pursuit. The problem isn't what you take, it's the pursuit of it that everybody is running after and pursuing it to such an extent, as opposed to saying, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, I'm sameach b'chelko, thank you very much. I'm not looking at my neighbor, I'm not looking at my friends, relatives, I'm not looking at his clothing, I'm not looking at anybody else, but thank you HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the bank account that you gave me, the parashat that you gave me, the house that you gave me, the parents that you gave me, the children that you gave me, the community that you gave me. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. That mentality, and now I'm looking to pursue good, that's v'chai bahim. That's how a person is able to succeed and really be matzliach. One more point on Parashat Acharei Mot, which I think is an unbelievable point. So, there's an incredible, the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron says something beautiful. It's normal in the world in general, and today I think it's times 100, that a person does something good. It's a humanity, right? You want to tell it to people. Let's say a person donated a lot of money. He wants to tell people. He did an incredible chesed. He helped out a certain family. They were struggling. They needed help with the children. They needed babysitting. He went in, volunteered, did it. Or Taharat Hamit, there was Cheva Kadisha, they needed a hand. He went there and he did a chesed. The natural tendency of a person is to say it over. He'll say it over to his friends, he'll say it over to his family. Now he'll post it on social media, look what I did. I did this incredible chesed. Now, in a certain sense, it's not, sometimes it's warranted. Not because he wants to show off, because a lot of times it's marketing. You make something public, then it creates an awareness, and then people want to do it more. There is a l'shem shamayim that it could be done in the right way. And we're not ones to judge who's l'shem shamayim, who's not l'shem shamayim. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's calculation. But not to say there's no room for such a thing. But a person for himself should always have certain things that he does. Every person in this room should have certain things that he does that he doesn't have to say to people. He could just do it, and nobody really needs to know, and you don't really need to share it. Now, why is that important? Why is it important to train ourselves to keep a low key? He says, very beautiful. This is Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron. He says, if a person has, everybody that's married knows, there's certain discussions a husband has with a wife with a husband. You don't let it out. You don't say it ever. You don't put out your chats with your wife, or you don't put out your conversations and start telling people, oh, I was speaking to my wife last night about this, about that. You don't say certain things. Why not? This is a privacy. This matters of tzniut. There's a relationship, a husband to a wife. There's a tzniut to not reveal what's going on in that relationship. And the vast majority of people in the world, maybe in the Jewish world, it seems like in the secular world might not be so much the case. But in the Jewish world, for sure, people understand tzniut, relationship, it's good, it's a bond, it's a connection, you don't want to share it to people. But sometimes we fail to realize that we also have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's a beautiful relationship, and that's a unique relationship. It's a personal relationship. And there's a tzniut that a person can have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you don't shout out your mitzvot. You don't go ahead and say, I did this, I did that. That's my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to keep it intimate. I want to keep it unique and private. And there's something beautiful about that. And it doesn't mean that everything that we do, we don't have to share, because it might be kedai. Certain things, like I said, you'll encourage others to do. If a person gives tzedakah, it's not always the right thing to be anonymous. Sometimes maybe your friends will see you, kinat sofrim. There is such a concept. He's going to say, "What, ma? He gave 120. I'm going to also give 120. He was going to give 26. Now he's going to give 120 because he saw that you gave. If you were anonymous, you wouldn't be giving that money." So there is such a thing, and there is such a place for that. But not everything falls under that category. And a person should know himself. And some things it's good to keep private and to keep hidden. As a matter of fact, the Gemara in Masechet Nida says it to a greater extent between a husband and wife. It talks about Abaye, it talks about Rava. When they were practicing intimacy, husband and the wife, they would even remove flies from the room. Flies, get rid of it, remove the flies. You might say to yourself, what's the sniut in that? There's a shy sign. The relationship between a husband and wife is something special. Now, there's no halacha, it's not required. Nobody heard of such a saif in Shulchan Aruch. When a husband and wife are talking to each other, all the flies need to be out of the room. Get out. Even the children sometimes are in the room when the husband and wife talking to each other. So certainly the flies are going to be in the room, but when there's an intimacy and then there's a relationship and there's a uniqueness, to kick out flies, that's a high level. That's a very high level, but shows you that there's an element of tzniut in everything that happens. Everything that happens, there's an element of tzniut. And a person has to have tzniut in avodat Hashem as well. Rav Pincus says beautiful. He says an incredible thing. One of the things we do after we finish the tefillah on Shabbat, Friday night, we come home and we say, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Acharei. We then say, Baruch Hu Nireh Shalom, right? And then, as Faradim, we say, B'shiftechem also, L'Shalom. But then after, we say, Tzetechem L'Shalom. You say to yourself, first you welcome the Malachim, right? And then you ask them for a bracha. Now, presumably, they give us a bracha, right? Then what do we say? All right, thank you, goodbye. We'll see you later. Like, where's the menschlichkeit? At least, there's a meal. Let them stay for the meal. If you're not for the meal, at least let them stay for the kiddush, something. Are you kicking him out already? As the pshat is, says Rav Pincus, now it makes sense. Because when you do kiddush, that's the yichud. That's us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oti beni uvenechem. It's our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not fitting that the malachim should be present here when we have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no room for malachim. Tzetechem l'shalom. We're doing kiddush. This is our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is our intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzetechem l'shalom. No room for malachim. And this is what it says in the parasha. V'chol adam lo yeh. Be'oel moed. No person is allowed to be in the Oel Moed when Aaron enters in to Kodesh HaKodashim. Why? V'chol Adam, says the Gemara, afilu malach, even an angel is not allowed into Kodesh HaKodashim for the very simple reason there's a relationship here. Aaron HaKohen, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a bond, uniqueness, nobody else is allowed in, even the malachim. It just shows us again the incredible extent of what it means to be part of this nation, to be part of this unique bond between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, in Parashat Kedoshim, a very unusual pasuk. We're going to try to string it together. The pasuk says, "Daber el kol adat bnei Yisrael, ve'amarta alehem kedoshim tiyu. Ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem." So first thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, speak to the entire adat bnei Yisrael, means the entire nation of Am Yisrael, and tell them to be holy. As we know, what does it mean kedoshim tiyu? Kedusha, you go around in the world and you start asking goyim, tell me what it means to be holy. Tell me what it means to be holy. They'll tell you holy is some Indian on a mountain who lives there and doesn't speaks for 20 years and hasn't moved for the last century and has birds flying on his head and he still doesn't react to it. That's holy. They don't understand. They have no concept. The Goyim have no concept of holiness. They can't even define it. If they tried to, they wouldn't be able to define it. As a pshat in Kedoshim, Am Yisrael understands, Hevu Pirushim. The Kedusha means separation. Separation in the form of elevation. When a person wants to elevate himself, there's only one way to do it, and that's to separate So for Am Yisrael, it's 613 mitzvot that distinguish Am Yisrael. It's that we don't act even in things that aren't technical mitzvot. If there's a whole bunch of donuts out there on the table, and you say, I'm going to take 5 and I'm going to eat all 5 of them. It's kasher lemehadrin. All the donuts are kasher. They're, afiyat Yisrael. They're all the criterias, chalav Yisrael, the whole thing. Everything is 100% kasher, but everything is tarif about what this person did. Why? It's the opposite. It's contrary to Kedoshim Tiyu. He went ahead and acted gluttonous. He didn't separate himself. He didn't elevate himself. He wasn't lofty in his conduct. That's Kedusha. Okay, that's the Pasuk tells us, Kedoshim Tiyu. That's the job of Am Yisrael. We know that. But the next Pasuk, Ish imo ve'aviv tirau. A father and mother you should honor. You should fear your father and mother. Ve'et shabbatotai tishmou. And also keep Shabbat. Ani Hashem Elokechem. 4 things here. Right? Kedoshim Tiyu. Ish imo ve'aviv tirau. Shabbatotai tishmoru. Ani Hashem. What does one have to do with the other? You try to string these things together and you say to yourself, there's no follow. There's no connection. This is a little bit Hasidish, but I'll tell you a very nice maaseh, real, true story. This story happened with, it was right after World War II, right after the Holocaust. There's a Rav who was Rosh Va'adat Harashei Yeshivot, who was a head rabbi. His name was Rabbi Tenenbaum. Tenenbaum, Tzaddik Yesod Olam, a great man, and obviously, he, Baruch Hashem, lived in Eretz HaKodesh, and he was being Po'el Hay, great tzaddik, a man not just of Torah learning, but a man that would go out to the people and try to be mikarev and try to do hesed and try to do a lot of amazing things. So one time, it was during Ben Azmanim, it wasn't exactly during busy season, and somebody comes over to him and says, I want to invite you to opportunity to be mechazek a tzibur that you're probably not used to. What kind of a community? Oh, this is kibbutznikim. Kibbutz is the commune, it's called in English. The kibbutz is basically, and especially in those times, the kibbutzim were all chiloni. They were all very secular, very, very far away from Judaism. To many of these kibbutzim, even to the extent that they wouldn't do brit milah, certainly not keep Shabbat, not keep basics, even kashrut, a lot of these places didn't keep. They were far, 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 far away, a lot of these. Some are better. Some did basics, some are religious, but by and large, it's a very secular institution, very communist institution as well. So he says, you know what, I'm going to go. It's a brit milah in a kibbutz, that's something unique, I'm going to go. Sure enough, he goes to the brit milah. They said they wanted him to be asiri. They wanted him for minyan. He said, I'm going to go. He gets there and he sees a very peculiar sight. There's a mohel. The mohel does not look normal. He's wearing shorts. He's wearing sandals. He has one of these, koter kippot. They have nicer ones these days, but they used to have the paper ones, the white paper ones. They look like a bat tshuva, right? Those kippot. He's wearing one of those kippot. He has a t-shirt and shorts. And he's doing the Brit Milah. So he was saying, oh my gosh, there's no way this Brit Milah is going to be kasher, right? He sees him doing the Brit Milah with such professionalism and dikduk halacha. His brachot, the whole thing. Like by heart. No. He doesn't know what to make of it. I don't get it. Shorts, t-shirt, sandals, barely a kippah, but he knows how to do Brit Milah to perfection. Such skill, such swift hands. He walks over to him to sort of schmooze up with him. The man was astute. He got that he was kind of working around to ask him. He's like, you don't even have to ask. Let me tell you. You look at me now, you think I'm some chiloni. You should know I'm a chassid of Vishnitz. And I used to do Brit Milah before the war for all of Vishnitz. That's where I learned the skill. I used to have peot, and I used to have all the garbs and everything. And after the war really took me away from Judaism, and that was never the same. And slowly but surely, I got myself involved in the kibbutz, and I went far. I went far from Judaism. As the war, to a lot of people, it strengthened them. It strengthened their religiosity, and they came closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But some people, it unfortunately had the opposite effect. And it was a war that nobody went through, none of us went through, Baruch Hashem. It's a very difficult thing to withstand the pressures and the times and where they lived. It's a big nisayon. That's why we pray. Al teve'eni lidei nisayon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shouldn't put us into these types of challenges. These challenges, you only know if you're able to overcome it if you went through it. He was not able to overcome it. And sure enough, he found himself on the kibbutz, but Brit Milah he still knew how to do, and he knew how to do it perfectly. No problem. So he was astounded. He couldn't believe it. The Avia Ben called Rabbi Tenenbaum, and he said to him, Kavod Harav, I have another small request to make of you. My father-in-law, who is the grandfather of the baby, he wasn't able to make it. He's already elderly. It's difficult for him to come. He's in the hospital. He's in such and such a place. He's sick. Can you please go, you're a rabbinic figure, can you go visit him? Wish him mazal tov and tell him the Brit Milah was performed and everything. Maybe shmuz him up, tell him some divrei Torah. He says, you know what? I have time. Mitzvat bikur cholim is a big mitzvah, and to be mesameach an elderly man and to give him good news, I'll do it. He went to him and he introduced himself. He said, I'm Harav Tenenbaum. I heard you deserve a mazal tov. You're the grandfather. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a chassid of the Caroline Hasidut. And the man stopped him on the spot. Caroline, Hasidut, Caroline, I have a story to tell you. This is the older man that's already sickly. He says, I have a story to tell you with the Caroline Rebbe, your Rebbe, during and before the years of the war. The Rebbe didn't make it out of the war. He didn't survive the Holocaust. But before the war, the following story that he personally saw. He was a German Jew, this fellow. And at that point in time, he already was not religious. He left and was not keeping Shabbat, nothing. He lived at the time in Berlin, in Germany. They're called Yekis, right? The people that are from Germany are called Yekis. That's the terminology of the German Jews. Everybody knows something about Yekis, right? First of all, they wear talitot even before they get married, unlike the rest of the Ashkenazim. Second of all, they're always on time. If you're late to Yeki, you got a problem. It's not going to be simple, right? You have to be on time. Although they say, I read, I don't know this to be true from my own experiences, but they say that the Irakim are the Yekis of the Sfaradim. I don't know, so maybe. But that's what they say, that they were also very punctual about things, and they were also very upset when you didn't have the same standard. Either way, one time in Berlin, the Caroline Rebbe came to visit. Now the Caroline Rebbe is from Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, Poland, these places, Hungary, they were much more, you could call them Masolti. Much more, I guess, not Yeki. It's a good description. And that's why the Chassidut in general, it never really took hold in Germany. It never latched in Germany because the Yeki mind was not like that. They weren't as attracted to the whole concept of Leibedik and singing and dancing and the whole Chassidish Maisa. Right? The Yekis are much more cerebral, intellectual. Give it to me straight. I don't want to hear all these flowery stories and all these wonderful fluff. I want it as it is. So Chassidus never took hold. And that's why many of the German Jews never, at that time especially, never saw a Chassid. So when the Caroline Rebbe came, it became a spectacle. It was, oh wow, he's here, he's spending time on Shabbat. Now, wait, what was he doing there? He had to go for a medical procedure of some sort, and that was considered to be the capital of the Enlightenment and the doctors and the academics and the advancements, medical advancements. So he went there. And sure enough, he spent time there on Shabbat, and he decided that he's going to have a tish. So they announced Friday afternoon, there's going to be a tish tonight with the Caroline Rebbe. And the Ashkenazim never saw a tish in their life. It was interesting to them. So they all showed up. Now the religious people, they were inside the Beit HaKnesset. The ones that were somewhat religious were also inside the Beit HaKnesset, but the ones that were completely off, they were embarrassed to go inside the Beit HaKnesset. So they kind of looked out the window. They were looking out the window to see what's going on because they were also curious. And he's saying over the story, how the Rebbe came, and the Rebbe gets up and he says, generally, when I'm in my community in Caroline, in Poland, I don't speak Torah in tishes. It's not the minhag of the Chasidiyot to have Divrei Torah at a tish. They usually sing, there's food, usually speak. Because the Baal HaBayit who's hosting me asked specifically that I should say Divrei Torah, I'm going to honor the request, I'm going to say some Divrei Torah. It was Bemet this Parashat Kedoshim, and he asked this question. He says, we find in the beginning of Parashat Kedoshim, Bemet, 4 different mitzvot that don't seem to be connected. Kedoshim tiyu, ish imo ve'aviv tirau, ve'et shabbatotai tishmoru, ani Hashem Elokechem. He says, the pshat is as follows. When I'm back with my Hasidim, when I'm there, I could just tell them 2 words, and they understand the message fully. All I have to do is tell them, Kedoshim tiyu. And they already know, to be holy, the Ramban, that they have to work on themselves, that they have to perfect, that they have to reach greater heights, they have to learn more Torah. They already have the full idea. To them, I could just say those 2 words, Kedoshim tiyu. Then you have in Am Yisrael a second tier. The people that started leaving Torah mitzvot. They're not as strong. They're not continuing so much in the path of their forefathers. And to them, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the very least, Ishimo ve'aviv tirau. Remember the path of your parents. Don't stray from that path. Continue in that way. I know you want to change, and your parents, were masolti, and you want to be a little bit more progressive. But Ishimo ve'aviv tirau. Stay along the same lines. Don't start introducing new concepts. Don't do new things. They didn't go ahead and they lived simple lives. You don't live complicated. Ishimo ve'aviv tirau. And there's some Jews that are even further away, that they left the path of their fathers, and they've already abandoned many mitzvot. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ve'et shabbatotai tishmo, but at least hold on to the Shabbat. Shabbat is the anchor, is the Mekor HaBracha, it's defining of what Judaism is, the Shabbat. Et shabbatotai tishmo. But Rabotai, there's a 4th group of Jews here that are not even entering inside the Beit HaKnesset, that are standing outside, that are there outside. And the grandfather was one of those people that was outside listening in. He was one of them listening in. And he remembers hearing these words. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, they left Kedoshim tiyu, they left the path of their forefathers. They even left Shabbat. They no longer keep Shabbat. But says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to them, at the very least, remember, Ani Hashem Elokechem. Remember that I am still your God. I am still your Hashem. Don't leave Judaism completely. Don't let your children assimilate. Don't let the karet kick in where it's cut off, where Judaism is forgotten from your descendants. And I remember hearing those words that the Rebbe said, and they resonated so much with me. And at that time, I had a daughter who was starting to be in the world, and she already started making friends, and she had a boyfriend who was German and not Jewish. And I said to myself, if I stay here, I'm going to lose my children. They're no longer going to be Jewish. So I decided that I'm picking up the next day. He picked up that Sunday. He picked up his whole family and said he's moving to Eretz HaKodesh. He's moving to Eretz Yisrael so that his children should at least marry somebody Jewish. And sure enough, my daughter ended up marrying not necessarily a religious Jew, right? A kibbutznik, but a Jew nonetheless. And she married a Jew, and this grandkid is their son that they're doing Brit Milah for. So to show you that even the Jews that are far away, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I have a message for you too. You might be far, but don't abandon me completely. Ani Hashem Elokechem. Very important message. Finally, I want to say one more message, one more idea. At the Parashat Kedoshim talks about the mitzvah tochacha. And one of the most famous hazals is afilu mea pe'amim. A person has a mitzvah tochacha, which means to rebuke his friend, even 100 times. He has this mitzvah to constantly remind his friend 100 times that he's doing the wrong thing. There's a chazal, if you think about it, a lot of times you don't just see one thing that a person does wrong. There's a lot of things, especially a person, there's some people, they have an eye for it. Some people have a talent that they're able to notice everything that the person does wrong. Oh, he's like this, he's like that, he's like, he's not doing everything right. Right? Imagine if you said, everything I notice wrong about my friend, I'm going to reprove him about. I'm going to give him tochacha on it. how likely is he going to listen to the rebuke, right? Let's just take an example. Let's say there's a wife who's tzaddiket. She's so righteous. Everything is avodat Hashem. Everything is yirat shamayim. Everything is holiness. And the husband's not exactly on that level. And every single day, 5 times a day, more than the Kiryat Shema, she points out to him, oh, you're making this wrong. You're doing that wrong. You're not doing this right. How many times is he going to listen to her? Maybe like 3 days within his marriage. Afterwards, he's not going to pay attention to her anymore. Right? How much tochacha can a person get and say, okay, I'm going to work on myself on this? He's going to have to make a whole list of things he has to work on himself. So says the Torah something beautiful and incredible. Afilu mea pe'amim. Don't rush. You might have 100 things on the list. Take your time. Even if it takes 100 times. Meaning, what do you mean? I have so many things I have to tell him. I'm going to say it all at once. No. You don't have to rush. Be patient. You have 100 things? Okay. Today, take one thing. You worked on it? Good. The other 99 things, put them away. Right now, 1. The other 90, you handle. You have more time. In another 3 weeks, you mentioned the other point. Oh, there's an opportune time where he's in a good mood. Now you mentioned the third point. That way a person can sort of shelf what's a good tochacha and what's not a good tochacha. If automatically, the minute you see something wrong, it's not going to work. Person has to have the ability to compartmentalize, to store the information, save it, wait with it, use it. Sometimes you have to do it right away, and sometimes you can wait. And that way, a person's tochacha can be effective. And that's true not just between a wife to a husband to a wife, parents to children, right? Community members to each other. So many cases where you might see somebody doing something wrong, but you have to then stop and think, is now the right time to point it out? Did I just point out to him something else and I'm going to tell him this and I'm going to lose the effectiveness of the tochacha? And that's why we have to be careful, especially with our children, more so than anything else, because so many times we're very eager for them to become good people. We want our children. We're not doing it from bad intentions. We want our children to be the best they could be. And we see them doing things that are wrong. Wait. You still have time. There's still a more opportune time to think like Yaakov Avinu. When he saw that Yosef sinned, he waited until his deathbed before he rebuked, not Yosef, I meant Reuven. When Reuven sinned, he waited until to rebuke him all the way many years later. Why? Because he knew that's when it's going to be effective. Before it wouldn't be effective, but now it's going to be effective. To have that kind of a calculation is extremely important. Sometimes, like the Noda B'Yehuda writes, like every mitzvah, there are certain times where you're exempt from it. There's such a thing. If a person is sick, so the Gemara says, then and he's not able to stand up, so he prays sitting down. If he's not able to pray sitting down, then he could skip tefillah altogether. He's not able to say it in his mind, he could skip tefillah. There's certain mitzvot that in certain situations you're exempt from. Anusa hamana patre. The same thing is true by tocha. A person who's angry, for example, and he's mochiach out of anger. He reproves, rebukes out of anger, patur from the mitzvah. If you're going to do it from an angry place, you're exempt. This mitzvah is not for you right now. Wait until you're not angry and then do the mitzvah properly. Because like everything else, you can't just do the mitzvah when you feel. If you want to take a lulav and you say, I'm going to do it at night. What is it at night? That's not when the mitzvah is. I'm going to do Brit Milah on the 5th day. No, you have to wait until the 8th day. Every mitzvah has its conditions, has a stipulation. The same thing is true. This mitzvah has a condition. One of those conditions, ochiach tochiach afilu mea pa'amim. If it takes 100 times, you have this and you have that and you have that. You have 100 different things you have to rebuke. Yeah, spread it out. Don't worry, it'll be okay. You'll be able to do it. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Bi chaim ha'kasha omer. צעק הקדוש ברוך הוא, זכו ישראל. לפיכך במצוות, שנאמר, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו.